online format. And that's a go. All right, so I'm Twyla Hupp, Assistant Director of Career Services here at Trinity University. I'm actually standing in for my colleague Christina Perez, who was the one who reached out to our panelists here and was able to coordinate everything and get the promotions out and things like that. So she's the point of contact, and I'm filling in. The purpose of this presentation is obviously to give you guys some exposure to some of the different types of state jobs and federal jobs that you can look at, and city positions as well. Just to find out a little bit more about what's involved with federal jobs and what path does that look like as far as different academic backgrounds, what it looks like as far as what you might progress to in the future, what you might look like 15, 20 years down the line versus, 5 years down the line. Is there grad school something that might be relevant for it? And all of those types of things we'll hope to cover in this panel in the next 30 to 40 minutes. And I'm going to start out with some structured questions for our panelists, things that we think you all might like to know. And then after that, I'm going to open it up to you all to go ahead and ask the questions that we may have missed, or questions that may have come up as something you want to follow up on, a point that was brought up earlier. When I ask questions, please feel free if you don't want to answer the question, or if you feel like someone else pretty much answered it spot on. Don't feel obligated for everybody to have to add information. And for the situation where you do want to add something, then feel free to do so. And the same thing with you all. If you want to ask a question to a specific panelist, no problem. If you want to ask it to all four, just let them know at the beginning of the question. The beginning of you giving your question, this is for all four panelists. Okay? All right, so who we have here today is Joel Anderson. He is from Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. We also have Jackie Krause from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration, and Kenny Scruggs, Correct, that's correct. Also from the same organization, and they're going to give two different perspectives. And then we have, Joe Oviedo yes. From Housing and Urban Development. And so they're from those different agencies. Again, is representing Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration, Housing and Urban Development. And it looks like the person for Palace Acquire was unable to make it. So those of you who might be interested in that particular information, we can connect you with those individuals directly at a later time. Just shoot us an email. So with all that being said, I'm going to go straight across. I've already said the name and the organization. I'd like for you to share, though, your title and then also your alma mater, where you graduated from, and what was your area of study. We'll go ahead and start with you, Kenny.
I'm an immigration service officer. I interview people that are trying to get immigration benefits. I graduated, I'm retired military, so while I was in the military, I got my undergrad at St. Leo College, which is based in Florida, but I graduated at a military base. And I got my master's at Gonzaga University. I was also assigned there, teaching ROTC, teaching college students.
I went to Texas State University, and my background is in journalism. I actually spent like 22 years, I worked for the Express News. Was a reporter and editor for the Express News for 22 years before I went into federal government.
What's your position title?
Right now, I'm a community relations officer. Pro, yeah. All pros.
My name is Joe Oviedo, and my title is Deputy Director for the Office of Public Housing for the San Antonio Field Office. And I graduated from Trinity.
My name is Joel Anderson, and I'm the Waste Section Manager for the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality in the San Antonio Regional Office. So we have 16 regional offices throughout the state, and San Antonio is the one that I'm the Waste Section Manager of. I have an undergraduate from the University of Oklahoma in biochemistry and a Master's of Engineering from Texas Tech.
All right, so now that we know a little bit more about them, let's go around here, and I'd like to hear your name and then your area of career interest, just so the panelists can have an idea of who else represented. We'll start with you.
My name is Jenna Daggett. I guess area of career interest right now is some kind of like conflict resolution or mediation. My name is Lauren Buller, and I'm looking into going to something related to public policy.
My name is Brianna Bolden, and I'm considering going into political journalism.
I'm Avantika Krishna. My interest is in U.S. foreign policy and education reform.
My name is Mitch Aggie. I'm interested in sustainable resource use for either water, food, or waste.
My name is Katie Sauer, and I'm interested in social work and social services as they pertain to immigrant families.
My name is Ali Albright. I'm sort of interested in like education or social work.
My name is Taylor Capps, and I'm more interested in international relations.
My name is Alexis Angelo, and I'm interested in education.
My name is Lauren Wilkes, and I'm interested in journalism-ish things.
Rachel Hyman, I'm interested in objective services or international relations.
I'm Caroline Kissa, and I'm interested in environmental conservation.
I'm Sarah Dolan. I'm interested in economic development and public policy.
I'm Sarah Jones. I'm a senior urban studies major, so public housing is definitely my area of interest.
I'm Mark Wilkinson. I'm interested in environmental policy and land use.
I wrote for the newspapers on this age.
Okay, cool. All right, so those of you who didn't get a chance when you did your introductions, tell us a little bit more about what your career path looked like from senior year of college to that first job afterwards to where you are now.
Well, for myself, I'm probably a little bit more non-traditional. I had about a year of college and I enlisted in the military and kind of went to school part-time throughout my military career, and then at my 9-year mark, I decided to become an officer. I had 2 years of college at that time, and so I went to officer candidate school, and the Army had a program where once you did your first few years as a lieutenant, then you could ask for a year off to finish your degree. So I kind of finished my degree mid-career, and then later on in my career, when I was assigned to Gonzaga to teach senior ROTC, there was a master's program there in organizational leadership that was kind of for professionals that they could go on the weekend and nighttime. So I'm a little, I guess, non-traditional.
Did your organizational leadership degree, was it something that they looked at when they hired you into the position you're in now?
Actually, the position I'm in now it's not really a position that there's really like I guess a program of study that's going to prepare you for it. So our agency hires in this position really just based on the amount of education you had. So because I had a master's degree, I qualified for this position. And then they train you once you get the position.
Well, they pulled me out in my junior year and said, what do you want to make your major? Because I was an undeclared major, and they had to actually come to a class and pull me out because I liked everything. I don't know what, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I had a lot of hours in English and journalism, so I put those down, and that's what I got. And when I got out, I wasn't real clear. I thought I concentrated in advertising because I like persuasive writing. I got a couple of, public relations advertising jobs, and I hated it. I mean, it was just, it was too much sell for me at that, And the particular, I learned something then is that if you're going to work and sell something, you better really believe in it and like it. And with the government, that's one good thing, is that, you can kind of, a lot of it is something that you can believe in and work with. But anyway, I ended up going to a newspaper, and I covered just all kind of different beats. I mean, over 20-some years, I did just about everything there was to do there. I really enjoyed it. At that point, however, newspapers were shrinking. I had small children at home, and it's very wild. You never know when you're going to work or where you're going to be sent to the next day and stuff. So you do it, and I decided to look. I was looking at government jobs, and this came open, and this is working with communities. It's not exactly it's not public affairs because you're not working directly with media. Sometimes with ethnic media, but you're working with community groups, organizations, immigrant families, immigrant education, and just trying to help them to understand the run of things, trying to help them get through the processes. You're trying to inform the public about new programs, anything that's happening, and so I took this, and I didn't really know what it would entail, and I've actually enjoyed it a lot. Our agency, I do want to say, I mean, we have a lot of lawyers work for our agency, any degree. Kenny can tell you that you walk down through the floor where he works, and there, Maria has a master's of Spanish and education. Different people have their degrees in a million different things, and it's very fluid. They do like Spanish speakers, or we have a Chinese speaker who's going to go out and do an outreach with me who speaks Chinese. So a foreign language is a definite plus. That's it.
I guess going back to my senior year here at Trinity, I had done a switch. I was a pre-med student and had pretty much just finished everything for that when I decided, I guess probably junior year, to switch to urban studies, and I took some economics courses, and I just really kind of enjoyed learning about cities and using that as a focal point for study. So from there, I had to decide if I was going to continue on with the application process to med school, if I was going to be more serious about going with this career path. I ended up going into the master's program in urban studies, which was around at the time with Dr. Lewis, and I think in that program and the professors I was around at that point, I was kind of guided toward what interested me. I ended up interning in the office of the city manager at that time here in San Antonio, and also found out about the, at that time, what was known as the Presidential Management Intern Program, which I competed for, and I was selected for, and ended up going to Washington, D.C., started my first position there working for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and then stayed until about 5 years later. I ended up at HUD. So that's kind of my path since leaving Trinity.
I guess, we mentioned unpaid internships,
yeah.
And I kind of chuckled, and I, got to thinking, well, I actually did one. So I guess my senior year of college, I was working for the FAA Toxicology Lab. There's a huge FAA campus up in Oklahoma City, and so I was driving from Norman, going up there, doing an internship with them. When I graduated, just happened to have a professor and a friend that knew somebody that needed a lab tech at Los Alamos National Laboratory. So luckily I had taken physical chemistry that last semester, and when I got interviewed, man, it was for electrochemistry, and I was able to nail every one of the questions. So I went from there to Los Alamos, and I was at Los Alamos for about 3 years. And while I was there, I took classes at the University of New Mexico there in Los Alamos and through Texas Tech. And I worked just on different projects at Los Alamos. I mean, you're basically at that level just a graduate research assistant. You're working on whatever a PhD comes up with or has funding to do. I went from there, went to Lubbock, finished up my master's, and then I guess love took me to Houston. And there I worked with a small engineering firm for about 2 years, but it was 2 very hard years. If you've ever been to Houston, there's a lot of chemical plants and oil refineries and things like that. And so I found myself every day working in the plants, and not in the plants, crunching numbers and doing engineering work, but in the plants, turning bolts, fitting pipe, sampling, and it just really wasn't something that I wanted to do. I think one of my enlightening experiences was when we were testing a stack, and we had a flare go down, and it was shooting burning oil down all over everybody. And at that point, I said, I need to find something else to do. So got to looking, and there was a job with the TCEQ, and it was almost written for me. I mean, it was what I had been doing. It was there in the Houston office. And I applied for that job, interviewed for it, was offered the job, and then here I am about 13 years later. I was a team leader in the Houston office for about 6 years, and then was the air section manager for the Houston office, and then again just decided to move the family out to San Antonio, where I became the waste section manager. So kind of in a roundabout way and not really planning on it, I've kind of had or been involved, I guess, with government jobs or government employees pretty much my whole professional career. You know, a lot of that's by chance, but you know, just kind of what came up was opportunity.
What experiences do you recommend that students have in order to be best prepared for entry-level type positions within the areas that you're in? So whether that experience be internships or a particular type of class or some sort of leadership or volunteering, what are some things that you think are critical to make them competitive for the entry level into your areas?
That's a better question for you.
Geez, I would have to tell you that when I was hired, most of the people that went into my job were either lawyers, journalists, communications degree people of some kind. They've now opened up, it's ISOs, like today, so you get a little bit of everything. I do think that if you have some kind of knowledge of immigrants, immigration, some kind of background, I would suggest anybody who's thinking about government jobs look at Washington, D.C. Because when you go up there, I mean, if you just go to usajobs.gov, there's millions of jobs. There's lots of jobs. The fellowship he's talking about, some of the brightest and nicest people I work with out of Washington started those PMF positions, and then they were able to transition over. When you're in Washington too, a lot of those people, they'll get a job. You don't have to be there forever. There are so many different agencies that you can find a fit for yourself too, and something that you want to do. So if you're willing to go there for a couple of years, you can take a job and you can move. It's not like, most of the time, it's not like you're stuck in one agency. Out in the field, in a place like this, there are federal jobs here, but I would tell you that a lot of them are military. And right now, Wounded Warriors and Warrior Transition is taking a lot, especially in an area like San Antonio. If you're in another city, there are going to be a lot more jobs open to you. And in Washington, sky's the limit. If you start in Washington, find an agency, then you can start looking for a position. If you want to live in Houston, or you want to live in Albuquerque, or you want to live in Denver, or wherever you want to live, you can look for positions and jobs there and try to move out. But you also just get such a big picture, I think, being in Washington. Or if you go with government, take a detail there. Ask for a detail to go work there for a while. It's different.
I guess, you know, just kind of picking up off the bat, when I got to DC, well, I guess right before I got to DC, in the program that I did, which is now called the Presidential Management Fellowship Program. It's changed title, but if you're in a master's degree program, you compete for that in the second year of the program. And your professors usually recommend from a set of students, it's at the top of the class, and then there's a regional competition. You go through a day of combination of things, interviewing, written skills, presentation skills. And once you're selected as a finalist, you get invited to go to Washington, and it's in a very short time frame. There's a career fair, and I just remember just jumping on the metro and interviewing with like 20 different agencies. I think now they have it more streamlined, and I think all the agencies come to one place. But you sometimes end up with multiple offers and having to make a decision. But it's kind of up to you to identify what area of the federal government you would be interested in. So it might be domestic programs, it might be international, it might be defense. And so if you do go to DC, you know, you will get that opportunity to kind of look broadly across the government and find a career that you want to start with there. Once you're there, like in the program I was in, you do get a chance to network and meet others who are also starting their careers. I had the chance for a rotational assignment on Capitol Hill, and that was another good opportunity to learn about a different branch of the government and understand it, you know, from that perspective. So, I think it would benefit a student who could do it, and that was interested to start, if you wanted to start a federal government career, to start in Washington, D.C. if possible. Out in the field, right now, just the practical information is yes, the jobs are tighter. We were mentioning at the beginning that, you know, maybe we do a summer hire. We've had some folks come in. A lot of it right now is internal changes, people just moving around in the organization, not a lot of new hires. Budgets are tight, and, you know, I guess we can talk more about those things. We're, I think, just starting year 3 of the pay freeze right now, which I'm sure others, you know, have feelings about that. But all in all, the government, although it's a tough sell, it's been a great place to work. And if you identify with the mission of whatever agency you choose to work for, it's something that you can feel good about, working for your country, getting to just work in something that you feel passionately about. And you know, it's not something that everyone can say or can do.
I would say experience-wise, obviously any type of internship. You know, the TCEQ does a really good job with Mickey Leland interns. I know that I've had up to three every year, just in the air section, but in San Antonio, I think we had 3 or 4 working every year. But I mean, even beyond that, just experience in dealing with people. I mean, we are an environmental agency, but in the field office, you know, day one, you're going to be in the field telling a guy that he can't pump water out of the river because he's not a senior water right holder. And if you just don't have the experience of dealing with people in those type situations, it's going to show pretty quick. The interviews that we conduct for an opening position, the majority of the questions, we usually ask about 12 questions, and of those 12 questions, really only 3 of them are going to be technical. And they're going to be at a level that you would expect a person just out of college to be able to answer. The rest of those questions are going to be, you know, basically how you are able to relate to people on an interpersonal on an interpersonal level. We are, probably one of the more responsive agencies in the state. You know, I haven't worked for another agency, but I know, you know, any phone call that comes in, any complaint that we get, we address it. And you know, you mentioned conflict resolution. We do a lot of that. And in interviewing people fresh out of college, you can catch on really quick as to whether or not they possess those skills to be able to address those kind of problems independently, because, you know, it's not going to be too long before that senior investigator isn't going out on those calls with you, and you're going to have to be handling them. So that's kind of my advice to folks.
I'll ask one more question and then open it up to all of you. Where do you foresee yourself in 5 to 10 years?
Well, myself, I would see myself in some type of leadership position or supervisory position in the office that I'm currently in. I'm fairly junior in our organization. I mean, I had career in the military. I've been working government service for about 5.5 years, so I have taken some steps to prepare myself for that. There are, in the government, there's some, not just our agency, but a lot of the federal government agencies, they offer leadership programs where you kind of get together with people from all federal government, different agencies. This is another place that you can network, and so if you do get into the federal government, this is a good way to network and maybe even go to another agency or go to another location and kind of get your name out there. And so I participate in one of those. So the federal government has a lot of programs in place to help you further your career if you want to do so, and so that's my plan.
I'm not sure because you know, that's how my whole life has been. But I took this job and it was a very small district. I worked for INS and it was 78 counties in Texas. So what's happened to me over the years is in the shift and changing when Homeland Security was formed, they broke up INS, which I had been with for a year. So I come back and they changed. I worked for 5 or 6 different agencies in a year. I didn't know what I was doing. You didn't know who you were going to report to the next day. finally, they put me with USCIS, and about 6 years ago, they changed our district to where we cover the whole state of New Mexico and the border of Texas up to Waco, down to Victoria. It's a pretty big area. So it's kind of nice, they developed a district office for that whole area, and I, instead of working for that small office now, kind of rose, well, I work for the district office. So I get to manage a program that's in 4 different field offices. And I like that, I really enjoy it. I've been, we really haven't stood a lot of things up in the past 2 or 3 years. We keep standing up new things, new programs, new efforts. And I've now got interns who are helping me with some of it to do various things. Something we're going to do now is we're talking about putting together like an immigration 101, naturalization 101 for reporters, for the media. Because a lot of people cover, if you ever work for immigration, it's very complicated. You'll see somebody cover something and they'll come out and say something, even on national news, sometimes you're like, oh my God, that's wrong. They have the whole thing, it's just backwards. Whatever they've done, it's like, that's not, it's just wrong information because you have to know the basics. So we're talking about putting that together, and the intern is going to help me set that up, have an open house where media comes in, can talk to everyone, tour the place, and we can give little, spot things on here's how you immigrate, here's how you get a green card, here's how you become a citizen. And I was going to ask for him to help me with that. Actually, I was talking to him today, and I sent an email asking, because he's very, very, very good at talking to people. I may retire in 7 or 8 years, and if I do, I freelance write still because I like to write. I want to do more. We're not allowed to use social media in the government. You can't get into we can't get into those sites or do anything. I would like to get more into social media. I'd like to, as a work-related sort of thing. And I like working with refugees, and I think that if I leave, I will probably do something and at least volunteer or somehow work with refugees, because that's one of the most rewarding things I can think of. That there are people who really are in a situation, they've been dropped in a country where they didn't mean to be, and I just really like working with them. So I think that I'll do something like that.
I'm not really sure. I came to back to San Antonio about 10 years ago, and I guess we happen to have field offices across the country and one in San Antonio, so I ended up back here. Right now, I like what I'm doing. I'm second to a director, so should he decide to retire at some point, I likely would maybe move to that position. I think for you guys, one of the biggest things that you might be thinking about is just how can I make a difference, just at that basic level. And I think it's not going to matter if you do it from the public sector, from the private sector. You're going to figure out where you fit in and where you can best do that from. When you start out, you do have to make some of those early decisions, and you'll know. And if you want to change, you'll find that there's opportunity out there. Mid-career, I decided while still working with the government to do an MBA program, and that was a tough thing to do. And I thought at that point that I would switch and I would leave the public sector and do something in the private sector, but I didn't. And I've realized for myself that there's something that I got out of the MBA program, but that I can use in my public sector career, and I think it has served me well. But it's going to be up to each of you individually. Wherever you decide is the best place for you to go, you'll figure that out as you go along. So I wouldn't get too anxious about the first decisions that you have to make of where you start. You'll know as you go along when it gets to that point that it's time for a change for yourself.
I don't know. Where will I be in 5 years? I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, so probably nothing too drastic.
You'll be retiring.
Yeah, that's right. Due to I guess kind of the the budget and finance, we've got several people that have masters. We've got some PhDs, we've got some PEs, but we also have we just have a wide variety. We've got people with forestry degrees and technology management degrees. I'm not saying that there is no need to get one, but I don't think that's going to be a deciding factor in the hiring process.
I would say in our office and the way things have gone in the area I work in, that it has become a little bit more important in terms of getting down to selections. I do think that there is something that you get out of the grad school experience that comes to play out in the workplace. One of the things that Joel said with in terms of just people skills and that kind of thing. I don't know if any of you have ever read any of the books on emotional intelligence, the Goldman books, but I think that's one thing. Just having that skill, wherever you work, whatever the situation is, of just being able to address situations correctly. You be a problem solver, a listener, an active listener, someone who doesn't need to be the smartest person in the room, and obviously you guys are all smart, but just know how to deal with a situation and with other people, so that you kind of are able to allow everybody's strengths to come to bear on an issue that needs some kind of resolution. There's just constantly, daily examples in the workplace of things that you get faced with where you have to use that type of skill set. And I think when we do interview questions, a lot of the questions are around that, and also talking about how do you work in a team setting. I'm sure in your classes you guys have had to do projects, presentations where you work in teams, and there's reason for that will you'll understand later as you get out there.
A recommendation that I would have is that if you go to the website usajobs.gov,
Yeah.
if you go to that website, you can actually set up a search, and you can have it send you the results of the search daily, weekly, monthly, however you want to do it. But in the search, you can say like, I'm interested in jobs with these particular agencies or all government agencies, and I'm interested in jobs in these type of fields. And it will kind of send you these job announcements, and you can review those job announcements, and you can see what the qualifications are. So after a while, you can kind of start to narrow that down, and you can say, okay, for what I'm interested in, it appears that a master's pretty important, or is a minimum requirement. Because there are some jobs in the federal government that they have these requirements, so that might be a good place to start.
The other thing is, when you look at that, some of them require a certain level of education or years of experience. So you might have to have 10 years experience or a master's. So I do not think that the more education you have is never going to hurt you. The boss, the field office director, we have a district field office director. Our field office director happens to be a lawyer. All things being equal, if you got a law degree, you're getting hired, the next guy's not. So I mean, it's kind of relative to the person there, but I don't think it ever hurts you. But what he was saying, I mean, it's been my experience that, I mean, you have to have a lot of people skills, being able to work with people. You'd be amazed how many unreasonable people and non-team players there are in the world until you go out and start working. And when you find that out, it's how you work a lot of the times. But I would have the education level, walk in and just be able to work with other people. Have a good attitude about things, and you're going to succeed in government. I mean, if you're willing to work, step back from a situation and take your time thinking about things, don't fly off the handle, because those are the kind of things that make people, oh, they're really, we've got this promotion here, she's done a really good job, or what, let's look at her. And those are the people that tend to keep coming up in my opinion. The ones who know how to work with other people.
And likewise, we do also have, in minimum qualifications, we have years of, or masters can count for years of experience. And then we do have some positions in Austin, like with dispersion modeling or pollution modeling or whatnot, that would require, that might require a higher degree. And then some of our permit engineering positions will require a PE license. So.
My question is specific to environmental jobs. You mentioned some of the degrees of people who you'd be interested in hiring. Most of those were pretty sciencey degrees. I came to science kind of late in the game, and I have a communications major, but a lot of environmental experience. Is that something that would make me less competitive in the job application process for an environmental position?
You know, not really. You would just have to make sure you word your resume to get past the screeners. You know, you might have to have, you know, 2 years of experience in the field of environmental sciences. So you'd have to word your resume to highlight that. You know, I don't get to see the resumes until, you know, here are the folks you're going to interview. But we did hire a journalism person, and I think that she wrote for some sort of environmental magazine or periodical. When I was in Houston, she turned out to be just fantastic. Great interview skills. I mean, she could get what she wanted out of people, and so yeah, you just have to make sure you word it. Look at the job posting and what they're looking for, and make sure that gets communicated in your application.
Okay, thank you.
And just as a follow-up, in that particular type of situation, when we have students come in our office with that, they don't have a degree that necessarily says you're going into this field where most candidates would. We often recommend that they do a summary of qualifications, which is exactly along the lines of what he was saying. 2 years of experience doing this, management responsibility for such and such project, leadership for both, but really keywords at the very beginning that has those things that they're looking for, so that they'll be enticed to look at the rest of your resume.
Have you done an internship in that area?
I have a lot of field experience. I went abroad last semester to an organic farm.
I'd also look for an internship somewhere. I mean, that's going to
stand out. Mm-hmm. Other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of interested, I mean, probably the most in Joe's position, obviously, but I just kind of like what exactly your day-to-day, what you do. Is it just a lot of meetings? Do you ever get to kind of talk with the people in public housing and that sort of thing?
What does he ever get to talk with the
Yes to all of those things. Okay. And if, you know, you ever, you know, want an opportunity to at least, you know, come visit or chat out or something, I'm sure we could set something like that if things are tighter with, you know, security and stuff with federal offices now. But it's just, sometimes you don't know from one day to the next. And I think just as the world is today, there's lots of competing demands, just information overload. So you kind of go through your day with your plan of attack, and there's certain things that I think, because of the budget constraints right now, the pressures are there to become more efficient with the resources that are there, shrinking federal dollars. Do the most that you can with them, and more accountability. The oversight and the reporting and all that we do now with the dollars, it's grown. I think we're making a better use of technology to try to track those things than we've had to. But just because it's easy to get information and to track information, that just makes the job more challenging, because there's lots of requests coming at you from different directions to try to be accountable and to try to improve things and to get to where you need to be. You do end up talking to residents. I spent a good part of my day yesterday trying to work with someone who was pretty much already at the point of being evicted from public housing. And, you know, when you get to those situations, you know, you're trying to explain what the federal government role is, how that relates to the role of the housing authority, which is a creation of the state, and you're trying to put it in words that somebody can understand, but you know, sometimes you're what that person believes that you stand between them and not having a place to live, and you're working with somebody who's in a desperate situation, and lots of emotion, lots of issues, but you got to get your points across, and you got to explain to them this is the role of the federal government, this is what we do, and if they're looking for help, you try to point them in the directions, and you have to be clear, you know, where you can or you can't help, and it's a process, and you know, you don't know exactly when those things are going to come up, and yes, in between, you've got meetings, you've got staff, you've got, you know, administrative things you have to do, and it's a balancing act. As you guys get older, you'll have families, and you'll have those demands, so you'll figure out, you know, within your career what is a good career, what's the right place for you to be that makes all those things work together.
Any other questions?
My question is for Joel. I suppose with the difference between more technical or scientific studies versus softer studies, like I'm studying environmental policy, I've done some biology and some chemistry, nothing too intense. But so for, I suppose, the regulation side of TCEQ, are the people working there, are they coming from the harder sciences, or like a policy background or public affairs?
You know, we really have everybody. And I know that doesn't answer your question, but, you know, in Houston, I had a guy that had a PhD in organic chemistry, hired a person in journalism, had some guys from that had forestry degrees from, I think, A&M or Southwest Texas State. I know those are two completely different colleges, but I, yeah. You know, we had several professional engineers. They probably would have fit better in different parts of the agency. For example, you know, we have permit engineers who review all the engineering aspects of it, and they're obviously going to have the hardcore sciences. But we've got rule writers who are going to be more into public policy and actually determining, okay, what is this going to cost the community if we pass this rule? In field operations, the rules are written for us, the permits are written for us. We go out there and enforce them. Now, in Houston, yeah, you are looking through, you know, GC mass spec data and flow meter data and things like that. But if that's not your forte, there's always somebody there that's going to be able to help you with that information. And then the next time you run across that, you'll be able to do it. So I guess really, I look more for just the ability, you know, positive attitude, the ability to learn, work with others, and effective communication more so than, you know, does this person have an engineering degree or, you know, a forestry degree, if that helps. Yes. Okay, good.
Great, well then I'm going to ask the panelists one more question, kind of. And then after that, you all are free to ask them other questions after we close if you had any burning questions that you just wanted to ask individually. Okay, so what I have is a statement I would like for you to complete. And the statement is, the work that I do is, fill in the blank. Can you just go down?
The work that I do is very fulfilling. I work with people with problems, people with family. It's really all about families, you understand that this country is the greatest country on the planet, and you see people in pretty desperate situations. They want to be here, but they want to be with their families, and sometimes the law allows that, sometimes it doesn't. And so to be able to help these families, and sometimes not to be able to help them in the way they want to be helped, but at least to deal with them in a humanely way and show them the best path for them to achieve what they want to achieve. It's fulfilling. It's emotionally exhausting sometimes, but tomorrow, if you're on campus tomorrow and you have time, we have a naturalization ceremony at the Laurie Auditorium. And even if you don't have time to come and watch the ceremony, which is from 2 to 3, if you have time, then it's a great ceremony if you've never seen one. But even if you don't have time for that, if you just have time to walk through the Laurie Auditorium at around 3 o'clock when those families are coming out of there, they've just become citizens, and to see the joy on their face and sometimes the relief, and if you have any inclination to work for the public sector because you want to help people, then you'll see what the payout is there.
My job is also fulfilling, but I want to add, you know, the naturalization, if you have time, we usually have citizen speakers. I'm assuming that's what we have. You pick 2 or 3 people who are fairly eloquent and they speak, and oh my God, I've got an ongoing thing with my interns. I'm getting them, the ones who are in the graphics, to go film. I'm trying to put together a film because it's incredible, the stories. I mean, the last film was a girl who's was a junior at UT. There was, and then who was naturalizing here. It was Laurie Auditorium. There was a guy from Colombia, and it's just incredible the things, the story. They'll tell you the story. They'll talk about how they got here, and it's very fulfilling to be able to help that. And sometimes the conflict resolution, when I got on here, I had no clue. They sent me to more conflict resolution, mediation, collaborative problem solving classes and courses because it's very complicated and there's always issues. And a lot of times, like you said, you can help people. It's really a good feeling when you can do that. And sometimes you really can't. I can tell them where they stand and how things, and it's really difficult sometimes. But it's good to have that kind of background, to be able to talk to people, and also to help them connect with government, because the problem is a lot of times they're kind of disenfranchised and they don't know they don't know how to connect with us. So you're trying to help them connect. And when I can help someone at least figure out what they're doing, where they're going, and how to do it, I feel pretty good.
I think just kind of going back to something I was talking about earlier, my job makes a difference. I feel like it helps people, and something that's very basic and needed. It's not the most exciting thing to a lot of people, but it's very important and very necessary.
I would say my job is challenging, never boring, and as fulfilling as it is frustrating. When people think the environment and pollution and all that, but we deal with people's jobs and their abilities to feed their families and provide for their families. So when you go to a facility and you tell them they have to stop doing what they're doing because of pollution and or they didn't secure the necessary permits, and they're telling you, I'm going to have to lay off 15 people, I'm not going to be able to feed my families and things like that. It gets dicey, and again, it's frustrating to have to do that. It's frustrating to say, I don't see why you don't understand you can't run an illegal landfill on your 10 acres of property. And they're saying, well, why can't I? It's my property. That's frustrating, but then also it's fulfilling because all the neighbors around them are complaining. I don't know if that's a good example, but I would say it's fulfilling as it is frustrating, but it is never boring. And when that phone rings, you do not know what's coming on the other end. Is it a rollover of explosives on Highway 6? Is it a refinery fire? Is it a blowout at a oil site? Or is it somebody complaining that their neighbor's barbecue is smoking them out? That's what you get every day.
Wow.
All
So-
right, well, thank you. Please join me in thanking again, I gave you guys the Trinity business card for the token of our appreciation. I also would like for all of you to know that if you do need assistance finding internships, getting those types of experiences that they recommended, we have our Supreme Court Justice internship, which is in DC, deadline coming up very soon. We also help students find internships in other areas. We have online resources. We can help you with your resumes, all of those different things. So if you haven't come into our office or you haven't come into our office in a while, come back in and see us and we can talk with you about the directions that can kind of lead you and also connect you with professionals such as these who can also give you further guidance about your career.
I have an internship listed.
Yes.
And we're taking applications for our Mickey Leland internship. So if you go to our TCEQ webpage and just click on the jobs tab, you can get to our Mickey Leland internship page. And I think we're accepting them we accept applications from now till I believe mid-March, and our internships usually run through the summer.
Thank you. If you haven't had a chance to fill out your name, just so we keep count of who all came, please do so before you